Eric here, product specialist for TOA Electronics, and your host to the podcast Sound Supply, releasing every single week. That's on Monday evenings, giving you guys the most up-to-date information on commercial AV. You can find us on YouTube, Anchor, LinkedIn, and even our Facebook page. Excuse me, guys. Check us out. Thank you for attending. Stay tuned. We're about to get started. All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's special webinar as we take a deep dive into our actually not brand new, but maybe brand new for some of you guys, a unit that we've had around for quite some time, the M-864D Digital Stereo Mixer. It's a unit that can benefit a variety of applications, and more importantly, we want to make sure you guys are clear and clear up any questions to help eradicate any preconceived limitations about the capability of this unit. So what is it? The M-864D is a rack-mountable digital stereo mixer with built-in proprietary, this is TOA technology, automatic resonance control, which we call ARC. And you guys may have heard that term being tossed around throughout TOA's history. And that's all built into the unit, so no additional hardware needed. Also, feedback suppression technologies, again, built into the unit. So today we're going to bring in two of our experts. We have Ian and Jim here today. We're going to discuss this with us. We're going to take a deep dive into the unit. We'll talk about where it fits into the market, how it can benefit your applications, and we're also going to throw in some emergency evacuation scenarios or security type scenarios where this unit can actually essentially shut down and route the needed audio out to your prospective audience. All right, if you guys don't know me, my name is Eric Huber. I'm a product specialist here at TOA Electronics. Been here for about 2 years now. And I've been hosting all these webinars and podcasts for you guys. Also, guys, we did just release a podcast on this unit, very generalized, but it'll give you a more brief understanding of what this thing's about. So today we're going to hear from, like I said, our two panelists. We're going to do something brand new. Actually, we have a live poll that will come up. I'll announce that during the webinar to give you guys an opportunity to see it on your screen. This is going to be digital, super interactive. We want to make sure you guys are interacting because we want to make sure we're bringing you guys the correct content. This way, both parties can benefit. We learn from each other, and we know what you guys want to hear. All right, and of course, at the very end of this, is our live Q&A, which will give you guys an opportunity to discuss any questions you may have about the unit, how to use it, where you can integrate it, anything at all that might come up during this. So essentially the M-864D, which is a digital mixer, thus the D at the end of this, is a sophisticated computer with a bunch of analog to digital or digital to analog converters built in. And more importantly, when you integrate digital technology, you can also do a lot of things with software, which is built into the unit, or firmware. So you're going to find DSP on board. I mentioned ARC. I mentioned feedback suppression. It's got a lot under the hood. Up front, it's a great piece because it gives you some analog control, which a lot of our units don't have. A lot of them are more towards set and forget. This one is more towards the performance type venue, where if you do need some hands-on control, it gives you that as well. And also it gives you the option to go into it digitally over network and either wirelessly control it with an iPad. We do have an application for this guy. You can use a PC. So there's many ways to get your hands on this thing and control it. So we'll talk about all those features, all the external control options. We'll get into the DSP built into the unit. We'll talk about ARC if you guys aren't familiar with it. And basically, before we get into it, it's automatic EQ curve, essentially, based on the actual architectural or installed space that the unit is installed in, which is awesome. And also all the analog type access, like I said, on the panel itself, what you have control over on the actual unit. So when you take that all into account, most importantly is this unit sounds phenomenal. It sounds fantastic. It is designed for the performance venue, larger installations where you need true mixing power over that application. All right, before I get into the first question, let me just introduce Jim McGuiness. Jim, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Eric. Thanks.
All right, Jim, no problem. And Ian, you are up first. How you doing, Ian?
Doing pretty good down here, buddy. Doing good.
All right.
Glad
Ian,
to be on board with you today.
Always. Ian, first question for you.
Yeah.
What is the biggest misconception about digital stereo mixers like the M-864D? And in particular, what are some preconceived limitations of this unit or digital mixers in general?
Yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned before is an important factor, right? While it's a digital mixer, it's processing digitally, which allows us to run through our DSP, the digital signal processing, as opposed to expecting that you require digital audio input, some sort of an AES EBU type of a digital front end microphone or some other source. So really any analog source can be brought in. This is a commercial type of a mixer, so we're not using XLRs, for instance, for the balanced inputs. We're using Phoenix connectors. We do have several RCA connectors on board. But on the digital processing side, you're able to go in and set EQ. You mentioned ARC. This is not the typical ARC that most integrators are aware of, which is on the display side known as auto return channel. This is an anti-resonance controller, so that when you've got a room with lots of echo and reverb, we can help to contour that sound through the mixer quite a bit better than what you would get through just a normal open microphone or normal open sound. And then, of course, very important for having multiple open microphones would be feedback suppression. In most cases, you're gonna have to go and invest in another piece of equipment to manage the feedback suppression. In TOA's case, for the M-864D, it's on board. We do have some other products, though, that will manage feedback suppression. If you're familiar with our digital wireless microphone, you can turn feedback suppression on right there at that microphone. But for folks who are adding this product into an existing room full of equipment, then it's awfully nice to have feedback suppression built in.
Awesome. Good stuff. And that's just a very brief overview of how powerful this mixer is. Ian mentioned a variety of different things. There's a lot going on under the hood here, and that's the power of digital. All right, Jim, going to you. Looking at a possible room combining application for the M-864D, and we talked about this briefly before we got on here. What are some particular examples of combining this unit with life safety and security products, such as like a mass evacuation system? This needs to talk to other gear, obviously, and how can it integrate in terms of an emergency type situation, or maybe even a security type situation?
Okay, so the 864 is kind of a high-end pure audio style mixer with a lot of horsepower behind it to do digital processing, as you and Ian both pointed out. So we've used this type of application mixer in, let's say you were in a school application where you have a big gym, competition gym, that type of thing. So you can use this mixer as the front end. But that school could also have a mass evacuation system built in as well. So we could integrate to that mass evacuation and shut down this particular mixer if we needed to with a contact closure on the back, or we could cause this mixer to shut down the majority of information that's going on through it and just leave open maybe, let's say, a microphone for emergency information, that type of thing. Additionally, the mixer does have an API, so you can control it through IP control if your mass evac system, can do that type of thing. So that is another option, but usually it's done through some sort of physical contact closure or similar.
Awesome. Okay, Ian, moving back over to you. This is a two-part question. Let's say, for example, let's say we have a large transportation hub in a major city. They have background music needs. Maybe they have a live performance venue or something on site there. Can you talk a little bit more about how the M-864D might fit into a scenario there? Live performance, background music, more of like a multi-type application.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the product like the 864D. And one of the questions you had started to throw out there to Jim, I think you kind of pulled it back, was the room combining capability. Very easy on something like the 864, as it is with the 9000, to store several different presets on how you want this mixer to be set up for any given application. And with a push of a button, either at the mixer or at using one of our ZM remote controllers, call up another preset, which changes the input selection and output selection of how this unit's going to get operated. So what you'll notice is right on board the front panel, you've got a series of faders. So you've got your input side and you've got your output side. You'll notice the output side of this mixer has got 4 faders. That's because it's built in with 4 zone outputs. So throughout the day, I might simply have a microphone routed into one of the inputs and selected to go to one of the zone outputs. Maybe that would be my factory floor or some other area within a facility, and just use this as a traditional paging or background music type of a system. But if I'm going to end up having a large meeting, I can turn off that far zone, bring up the local room, and turn on the additional inputs for additional microphones and additional music for that local zone. So the idea of being able to have one centralized mixer that allows for, in essence, multiple personalities on how it's going to be operated right from that front panel or from that remote control, or moreover, from an iPad, right? Really easy then to not even have to worry about where this unit's going to be positioned. This is not going to necessarily always be a front of house type of sound system where your mixer and amplifiers are at an arm's reach. This could be very easily locked up inside of a wiring closet someplace, just humming along doing its job. I can just grab my iPad and then run the full operation of calling up presets, opening up the room for its new application, and then operating it my input levels, my output levels, what zone I'm heading out to, all from that integrated front panel controller on your iPad. So it works for lots of different applications. And to me, that's really where the strength of this is, that all the different personalities of what you get from this unit.
Yeah, super flexible. And it's full matrix, right, Ian? You could send any input to any of those 4 outputs?
That's exactly correct. Any input to any output. So the fact of the matter is, if you did have a microphone wired up at an entryway where you may have a reception desk set up, I could have that set up to go out to output number 3 and number 4 and not affect output number 1 and number 2. So while I'm having a meeting going on in a meeting space using 6 other inputs going to 2 other outputs, it doesn't affect at all the operation of my normal daily operation from the reception desk out to those remote zones.
Awesome. All right, second question, Ian. Let's say Jim and I were both integrators and we're working on a bid for a large project where the M-864D could be the right product. What are some questions that you might be asking us as integrators to make sure that we're designing the system to meet all of our needs? Any questions that you could think of? M-864D, large project, we got a bid. What questions are you asking us?
Yeah, when I get into those situations, I really ask a lot of questions, starting off with exactly what are all the sources that are in place or planning on being put in place by manufacturer and part number, so we can be better aware of exactly what we're dealing with. So for instance, if those microphones are a traditional analog, it's going to be important for me to make sure that folks are aware that we've got this internal feedback suppression circuit that adds a lot of value to this product. That's going to eliminate the need for purchasing an additional feedback suppressor down the road. And then I really want to get a better idea on what's going on with the room itself, potentially the room acoustics in the case of the M-864. If this is a square box with a hard floor and a wall of windows and a big open high ceiling, there may be a lot of echo reverb going on in that room. And that takes some special doing to get around those sort of sound artifacts that you're dealing with. The M-864 becomes a great solution for that room because we have the ARC, the anti-resonance controller. I'd simply explain the process, which is really quite simple: setting up the open microphone, letting the unit itself generate its own tones. It then listens for those tones, listens to how that sound reacts within the room, and helps to contour the equalization, the digital equalization, rather automatically. So understanding the number of sources and the types of sources, understanding the room dynamics, understanding whether or not feedback suppression is going to be needed. As you pointed out, how this unit can tie into the other needs within a facility because of the multiple zone capability. And then, of course, whether or not a particular room may become a shared room, right? Where you've got a movable wall that breaks it into 2 rooms or 4 rooms or 1 large room, and then how we're going to set all those inputs and outputs up around that particular application. So it's a long conversation to really have. You really want to dig into as much information as you can possibly garner about how this room or entire facility needs to be set up so that TOA can come up with the right solution. And many times the M-864 is exactly that right product.
Awesome. And one thing that we didn't mention yet, and Jim, you can touch on this if you don't mind, is the compatibility with the ZM9000 series serial remotes. It's got built-in I/O right on the chassis for that. Jim, anything you want to add in terms of the flexibility of adding remote control to the system?
Sure. Just to touch on what Ian was saying before we get into that is, we look at as much information as we can possibly garnish out of a set of, facts about a particular room application. But it's most important that we get the mechanics of the room as close to possible best performance without doing electronic change. Because we don't like to come in and say, well, we're going to take any unit, whether it be our branded unit or any other one, and just miraculously hit a button and everything is perfect. Well, not so easy done just from the magic point of view. We always want to get the mechanics of the room as best we can first, and then we apply our arc, feedback suppression, etc. And then you end up with a really stellar result, because then any of the room acoustics that couldn't be mechanically adjusted, or not completely at least, we can take care of the rest in most cases. In answer to your question on the remote controls, yes, the 864 shares the 4 serial remotes that we use on the 9000 M2 series. We offer the go-to, which is the ZM9014, which is a 4-button plus volume control unit that goes into a 2-gang box. But then we also offer expandability on that to add more volume controls, the ZM912, and then more buttons, which would be a 9011, which is a 4-button, or a 9013, which is an 8-button. So you can expand out what's going on your mixer to do a lot of different things. And if you do program remotes similarly, let's say in a room where you might have 2 or 3 remotes programmed the same, they report back to each other, so that there's not a confusion where one remote is set one way, one is set another. When they're talking on the serial bus, then they're all in unison, so that there's no confusion. But that's a great tool to have in your tool bag, for this remote, I should say, for this mixer, that you can control it via remotes and get a lot of performance out of it. So, adding them up to 16 remotes is a pretty powerful addition.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can get your hands on this guy and actually control it, whether it be iPad, the ZM remotes, on the panel, a PC. We also have the software available for it. So there's many different ways to get your hands on it and make the adjustments, or the integration side of things, the actual setup, as easy as possible. Jim, just another quick question on the remotes. How far can you run those from the unit? Max?
Depends on how they're configured. So there's 2 methods by which we connect the remotes, so-called star method, which is a home run to each remote, or we can do it through daisy chaining. So where you go into the remotes have a dual port, an input and an output, we'll call it. And so we go into port A, and then we come out of port B and go to port A of the next remote. Yeah. So if you're daisy chaining, it depends on the length of that cable, which will determine whether you can get a full 8 remotes on one port. We have 2 serial ports on the back of the mixer. Each port can handle 8 remotes. So depending on the length, you can go about, if memory serves, about 2,600 feet if you do star wiring. And then if you come down and do daisy chaining, depending on which cable you use, you might cut off about another 600 feet off of that. So, a little less than 2,000, 1,700 thereabouts with daisy chaining, depending on cabling, etc. The specs are in the manual, but if you want your maximum capability, you go with star wiring.
Okay, cool. Great information, Jim. All right, guys, at this point, we do have our interactive poll coming up on your screen right now. Should be popping up. And the question is, are you guys familiar with feedback suppression and ARC, or ARC? We briefly went into this. We just want to know if you guys do know about it or don't know about it. Obviously, if you don't, after today's webinar, you can ask us any questions, or maybe at the end of this, if something you want us to clear up, we can definitely answer that. So let's take a few seconds here if you guys can answer that real quick. Okay, beautiful. Jim, let's go back to you real quick. So TOA products are known to be obviously durable and stand the test of time. We hear it from our integrators out in the field almost every single day about units running for 30, 40, maybe 50 years. I don't know. 30 and 40 years, I definitely hear about. But from you, from a technical perspective, we may have listeners out there that, I've heard about the limitations of the M-864D. Granted that we just kind of went over that barrier. And as we said earlier, our goal really is to set a level of how truly flexible and powerful this unit is. And we just briefly covered a lot of different areas in terms of how this can be integrated. But what are the technical opportunities and applications for this unit where it can really shine and excel?
Well, one of the things that we didn't touch upon is it's combining with our associated processor, the DPSP3. So the DPSP3 is a full digital processor. It's basically a crossover system, right? So you could use it as a crossover network on a three-way speaker system. But we can use that in conjunction with the 864. Both of these units are IP controlled. So if you were to set these two units up with their individual IP addresses and a little network switch, you can tell the 864 that the DPSP3 is in its system, in its network. And then what will happen is the two can be married together in the settings software. So now you're taking the 864 and our DPSP3, marrying them together. And as you change presets, the DPSP3 will follow, it'll chase what the 864 is doing. And on a secondary note, you can also do an 864 as a primary and a second 864 as a secondary. So you can have another 864 chase a primary. So there's a lot of powerful options that this unit can do, and it's, it's a solid state device, very durable. We've been using it for a lot of different applications, but a lot of people, forget that we have a higher line product that can, fit the bill for a lot of different higher end audio applications. And when you combine the external processor that can chase, marrying it to another 864, the ARC room resonance controller, feedback suppression on all 8 mono inputs, very powerful tool out there that a lot of people aren't always remembering that we have.
There you go. Okay, guys, let's have more of a open type discussion here about maybe some examples of either a customer requesting the unit specifically and then letting you know exactly why it was needed, which you could have learned from, or perhaps maybe recommending it based on their application. So let's start with Ian. Ian, recently, over the course of, could be a couple of years, any stories or examples that come to mind regarding this specific unit that you'd like to share?
I think the typical application that the 864 comes to the forefront is because of the resonance control capability. So in house of worship applications, large, open, echoic rooms where you really want to try to manage that. School gymnasiums, right? Large areas, square boxes, very reflective surfaces everywhere, big, high open ceilings many times. You want to try to get some kind of control over all of that reverb within that room. That's where the 864 first comes up for, I think, most applications. Secondarily to that, whenever folks are talking about wanting to have multiple zones, and if they happen to just throw out 4 zones is what they want to deal with, the 864 right out of the box is perfect for that. But one of the things that Jim mentioned is how we can tie this into other products. We can also tie this into our 9000, which would allow us to take those 4 outputs, loop them through a 9000, and then additional functions and features start to open up. We talked about tying this product maybe into a security application. Sure, we could do that for a certain level where calling up a trigger, for instance, might change the parameters of the 864. But we could also very easily loop this through a very basic 9000 chassis and then have ducking and priority overrides being added to the back end of the solution. And these are, these are the types of answers to problems that folks really are looking for when we can tie multiple products together, solve the problem, give them all the front end input control and output capability, remote control that they might possibly want. And as you pointed out, have it go in there and be working for the next 10, 20, even 30 years.
Yep. Durability. And then, I love how our products are flexible in a way that they do communicate well with a lot of different gear out there. And especially in emergency situations, you definitely want that to occur. And the options are truly endless.
They really are. And, one of the other points, just looking at the fact that the A64's got 4 outputs, that just marries up so perfectly to our DA250F and DA500F digital amplifiers. So for not very many rack spaces, we can take care of all of your input and output mixing and amplification in all of potentially 4 rack units.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah,
Super
then
powerful.
tail that to a small router, right? And so now you throw these pieces of equipment in there, and you can choose to use your iOS iPad control. Or one thing we didn't mention is if we use, let's say, a Surface, like a Microsoft Surface, you can load the full software suite onto that Surface, and that also allows for full control as well. So you have iOS options, you have PC-based options with the simple addition of a small router for the area.
Yeah, Jim, the Surface point is interesting. So that would be, obviously the OS would be Windows or PC based, and you'd have touch control over the actual full-blown software suite.
Over everything.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Jim, back over to you real quick. Same thing with Ian regarding the M-864D. Any designs recently that have been plopped on your table that included this unit and how it was integrated with the rest of the system?
The biggest ones I've done in the recent past have been school gymnasiums. It's pretty popular for that, as Ian had mentioned before, because of the bright surfaces, et cetera. We can control that, and usually I do marry that to a DPSP3, so I can get the woofer control along with the main speaker arrays, and that way we get good performance, because we often have live sources in there, such as wireless mics or wired mics, and so it's a great choice because of the room acoustics, the feedback suppression, all of that. So it's definitely a go-to. And also for auditoriums, I have another auditorium recently came in that we may go with that mixer as well.
Okay, excellent, guys. Appreciate the information, Jim and Ian, as always. Very, very good points. We talked about how flexible this unit is, the power of DSP built into it, the routing capabilities via Matrix, the tie-in with different systems, including security and mass evacuation scenarios. The list goes on, and we just want to make sure you guys are aware of how powerful the M-864D is. And as always, any questions, let us know. All right, guys. Also, brand new webinar coming up next month. Special guests coming on, and then also our podcast every single Monday going forward, featuring myself of Sound Supply. Just a very natural conversation about what's currently going on in the market and how you guys can actually benefit from those. All right, so stay tuned for the live Q&A, and we will be right back. Okie doke. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning in. Let's get into the Q&A here. One quick point I do want to mention. Thank you guys for taking the time to fill out that poll. We got some good information there. So there was a 60-40 swing regarding knowing about ARC or understanding ARC and not knowing about ARC. Jim or Ian, can you guess what the 60% answer was? Is it no or is it yes?
Gotta be yes.
It's definitely no.
Really?
Yeah, so the majority of our attendees today do not, at least maybe they've heard of it, but they don't understand it. And we'll get into that real quick. I want to just get into the questions before we dive into that. James Duval, thanks James for attending. James's question: do you have a system design example showing the system's layout capabilities? Jim, I'm sure you have some reference that we can provide them, examples of systems designs.
Sure. Feel free to give me a call here at 12:32 at TOA and go over different examples that we've done over time. I do have some past systems that I put together, again, with the M-864, DPSP3, a variety of our, digital amplifiers, et cetera, or I can make up, whatever you need. So again, feel free to get back to me directly at 12:32 here.
Awesome. Another question that Jim answered. Thank you, Jim. Where was the M-864D made, or where is it made? It is made in Japan. Is that correct, Jim?
That is correct.
There you go.
It's made in Japan, and one thing of note would be that our price sheets to our resellers, our reps, our VARs, our distributors, and even our MSRP map price sheet shows the COO, the country of origin, for every product that we make. That's a pretty important factor for a lot of folks, especially anybody who's getting involved in government business and is concerned with TAA compliance.
Yes, we do have that information available. So if you guys need it, please ask us. We will definitely provide that for you. Also to mention, as our website grows, we are looking to improve that greatly. We will be rolling out configuration examples online of a lot of our designs, and we'll try to incorporate some images. This way you guys get some visuals, as well as perhaps some line diagrams as well. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be added to our website. So you guys at least can get some kind of visual on how these are integrated and what they actually look like. All right, back to I got a couple other questions actually before we get into ARC. Jim, we talked about the remotes. How are they commonly used with the 864D? Is it going to be mainly presets, zone control, volume control? What have you seen? Or Ian,
the two popular ones I'd say would be as if we're calling different presets, right? So that makes it easy. You get a full load of parameters. The other one would be as if you're using the buttons as a source selection, right? So you have 4 buttons and you want, mic 1, mic 2, some music background or that type of thing. You can mix and match, your various sources, and then control the volume using the knob that's on that controller, and that can be set up as kind of a gang controller or an individual channel control, depending on what you program.
Jim likes to point out frequently that the price difference between those controllers is so close that offering the 2-gang version with the 4 buttons and the volume control is still a very cost-effective remote application. So the whichever capability you're looking for, sometimes it's just as easy for us to provide the unit that offers more capability than less. Unless for some reason the system design really requires very minimal user input in a particular location where just the volume control would be utilized. Otherwise, buttons and a knob do a great job.
Awesome. Jim, in terms of mounting options, number one, this guy's a 4-space unit?
Correct.
So aside from racking it in a simple vertical rack, are there any other options? Can you put this on a desk, like an angled desk or something?
Yeah, I mean, you can, because it's not a deep machine, right? So the way that they laid it out was designed so it could be, let's say, on a tabletop rack type of thing. Of course, in a regular rack, it could go in a mobile rig because there's not a lot of depth. So that way it affords a lot of different options from that point of view. So it's good for that. And then the connections are kind of on angle, so you don't have to worry about, your wires have to come straight off the back of it and you're going to jam into the back of a case or something. They're on edge, so that way you have plenty of room to plug in regardless of your application mount.
Okay. Question for both you guys. We'll ask Ian on this one actually. Have you guys seen this in terms of obviously our DA amps were mentioned as a pairing option because of the 4 outs, very easy connections there. What about the speakers, Ian? You see these guys running, or an A64D running with a couple HX5s, HX7s, some
Sure.
FBs?
I think you're going to find that in any room where there are echo issues, reverb issues, just anything where, that resonance control is going to become important, you're going to find speakers like HX5 and HX7 that have a controllable dispersion pattern, coming right to the forefront of an application for us. Same thing when you've got a speaker where you might be able to rotate the horn adapter to control the pattern dispersion. So whenever we get into these little troublesome type of rooms, whether it be ARC, and remember, we've also got ARC on our little 1 rack unit mixer as well, also digital mixer. So we offer ARC in a couple of different mixing solutions. And then, any of our speakers that are going to help us to control that pattern dispersion, HX5 and HX7 are absolutely come to the forefront because of the fact that, it is a variable dispersion speaker. But when Jim was talking about looking at auditoriums, our line arrays, our compact SRA and SRC line arrays would also be utilized for that same type of application, really tight dispersion control.
Excellent. And Jim, you mentioned the add-on unit that communicates very well with this piece, the DPSP3.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you add that to something like this?
Well, so you can do high-low crossover properly with subwoofers. So typically in a higher end system, we're going to have, let's say the auditorium that Ian and myself have been talking about, you're going to have some version of a line array or some speaker system, but then we're going to add in subwoofers so that you're going to have proper control of mid to high frequency versus low frequency. You want to add in that DPSP3 because it allows for shelving and various filters, many of them actually on input and output side. Plus it's a crossover matrix in and of itself. So it's got 2 inputs and 6 outputs. So you can assign whatever output channel goes to whatever input channel. So there's a lot of combinations that we can do depending on the application. But typically, a couple channels in, a couple channels out. We can set the shelving. We can set the frequency for each channel over and above what the 864 does. With ARC, with PEQ, and all of that.
The other feature within DPSP3, at least that I've used most often this past year, was setting delay for delay speakers. Yep. So in a football field where we were throwing across to that far side, from the home side over to the visitor side, and then adding 1 or 2 additional visitor speakers on that far end, you've got to time that out nicely. The DPSP3 has got a very, very wide range of delay that you can set in not only in milliseconds, but also by feet, which is awfully nice, right? If you can just calculate, I've got to throw 330 feet, enter it on in there, and it'll automatically calculate your delay.
There's another thing let me point out also for the DPSP3 that I would probably venture to say most people aren't aware of, is that it has a whole memory bank of EQs built in for many of the TOA products that is accessible by its IP web browser. So if you want to invoke the preset EQs that we have in there, you can go in and do that. And then if you use the setting software, you can modify any or all of those settings. So just to be aware of that, that is available through its IP address.
Cool. All right, guys, and we'll wrap up with this. Let's get back to ARC, automatic resonance control. So 60% of our guests do not exactly know what it is. Jim or Ian, Jim, we'll start with you. If you could just briefly explain how it works, essentially, not too deep, to give them an idea of why it would be used, what it's doing, and then how it actually reacts to what it's doing.
Okay, so what we do is on input 1 channel, we connect up a microphone. I usually recommend, a clean wired mic, not a wireless. I've seen people make that mistake, but make sure it's a wired mic. And then what the machine will do is when you invoke the calibration of ARC, it's going to send out a series of pings and then get that back as a response through the microphone. And it will then analyze that response and then adjust within the settings of the A64 automatically, adjustments to get rid of, possibilities for resonance or feedback or, key points, key cues that are in the room that might present a problem. So that's all done for you, and then it's very easy to invoke.
And is that typically done on the initial installation, like the integrator, or is that done per event basis? Is it real time?
No, it's usually done for the event. I mean, unless you're doing a mobile gig, right, where it's moving around, then you could do something like that each time you get into a new space. But normally, when it goes into a fixed location, once the integrator has all the hardware set up in the space, then you'll invoke that ARC feature behind the clear plastic panel that's on the front panel of the 864. And once that's done, then it's set. You don't have to do it again normally. I mean, unless something in the room changes, but typically it's one and done.
Awesome. Ian, anything you want to add to that?
Not in particular. I actually have almost a question that I wonder if Jim might be able to take a look into. And that is the ability to potentially store, let's say you've got a room combining application. Could you then store ARC based on different room parameters as part of the various setup parameters? So when you recall, preset 1 or you recall preset 2 for a room variable that gets changed, could the ARC also setting be preset as well?
Actually, it's a very good question. I haven't really checked into that to see whether it's global,
right?
Whether it's located within each preset.
Yeah,
so that's actually a good question. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I have the only ARC that I did recently was on our smaller mixer, and it was just for a relatively small multi-purpose room that wasn't really going to be getting its parameters changed, but it certainly helped with the echoic nature of this particular heavy reverb room. Yeah.
So
of course, a lot of people don't quite understand though, right? It's not going to replace adding in sound absorption panels, flying clouds and the like. Things are going to really help to absorb a lot of that, but it definitely helps to contour it.
Sure. I assume you're talking about the M633D.
The smaller M633D, which is just a single rack unit.
Right. Yeah. So like I said previously, is that you got to get the mechanics of the room as best you can first, right? Because what is sound? Sound is, physical. So you have to get the room mechanics right, and then we'll apply the electronics to help it along a bit.
Thank you, guys. We do have one last question here. Any plans on incorporating Dante into any of our gear? Jim, any news on? I know we are going in that route. We're getting towards everything being networked and matrix mixing over network and things like that. So yes, we are aware of those capabilities and the needs from our clients. We are going that direction. In terms of adding it to something like this, I don't see it likely. It would probably be a new product. We're looking towards our amplifiers getting that digital matrix routing over Dante or whatever that protocol might be. Might be Dante, might be something else. Jim, anything additional you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, that discussion keeps coming up in product design. So I haven't heard the latest, but yes, it's always on the forefront. We're trying to get a lot of our product IP based to get that portion done. And as you well know, that we have a few new entries in the category lately. So therefore, we have expanded our IP base. So then the next piece will be, taking Dante and incorporating that in at some point. I don't know that timing yet, but yes, we're looking at it.
Yeah, we should call it the M-864D, according to Dante Digital or Digital Dante. Danny Davis question, are there aux sends to separately control monitors? Or can you send, I mean, Jim, Ian?
Not aux send, not on this model. No.
Okay. No aux sends, Danny. Good question though, appreciate it. Any other questions coming in from you guys before we wrap up? Looks like we're all caught up. If you guys have any last minute questions, reach out to us, let us know. I'm sure there's many. Yes, we are going in the realm of network audio, and that's our main goal going forward, as well as putting our foot in and making you guys aware of what products can be applied to security or mass evacuation or life safety scenarios as well going into 2022. But network audio is a huge thing for us, and we're excited to bring you guys some new things. So we are working hard behind the scenes. All right, that looks like it, guys. Again, thank you, Jim and Ian. Appreciate it. Very informative, excellent, and hopefully we brought you guys all the information you needed. And then again, if you don't have any additional questions, or if you do, reach out to us directly, and we'll definitely help out with that. Remember, every single Monday podcast coming at you from my home studio in my bedroom from Jersey City, New Jersey, and every third week of the month now for Webinar Wednesday, or every second week of the month. Make sure you guys are signed up, and we will see you next time. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. Thank you guys for joining, and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.